Thanks for watching. On March 6, 2011, architect Richard Gage and I had a public debate in Boulder, Colorado on the question of whether the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center buildings on 9/11 was caused by controlled demolition or whether they collapsed as a natural consequence of the plane crashes and the subsequent fires. Richard Gage is a qualified architect and a member in good standing of the American Institute of Architects. 3 video cameras were set up and a California video crew was hired. Rule of Law Radio's Thomas Keeley was flown in from New York to moderate the debate. Over 250 people attended. The hope was to model a respectful debate on a contentious issue and to expose both sides of the question so the audience could be better informed to decide which theory had stronger scientific support. 9/11 Truth activists invested in this debate and planned to edit and produce it for possible use on public television in time for the 10th anniversary of 9/11. I had also hoped that for the hardcore 9/11 activists, they would finally have a clear, forceful, respectful argument against their case from someone who carefully researched every scientific claim and could express it in layman's terms as well as Richard Gage expresses their side. But after 2 months of intense discussion, I was informed that the video of the debate was not going to be released. Quote, "We are now working on projects that can help this movement much more than a DVD of this debate, a longer version of Firehouse 9/11, a new 9/11 video, Experts Speak Out." The decision was theirs to make. It is still possible to listen to the audio of the full debate by Googling Gage Mohr debate March 6. While I had collected so much information over this debate, I decided to present it on this video so people can see my argument for natural collapse and reconsider the conclusions of Richard Gage's video, Blueprint for Truth. Gage offers a compelling presentation in support of controlled demolition. He's backed up by over 1,500 architects and engineers who have called for a new investigation of 9/11. In Blueprint for Truth, he says, "You are the jury." After watching his video and mine, you'll have a good introduction to both positions without actually having all the acrimony that often goes along with this subject. And, like a good juror, you can suspend judgment until you have truly and openly considered the evidence on both sides. Richard and I know that any government can commit atrocities. If you don't believe this, you will not be able to hear this argument, and you will be ignoring the painful lessons of Nazi Germany. I have journalistic training and experience from Washington University, where I was mentored by a tough investigative reporter from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, who helped break the mafia's stranglehold on City Hall. He would tell me not to take at face value NIST, the 9/11 debunkers, Richard Gage, anyone. Richard's training is in architecture, so we both know a thing or two about critical thinking and analyzing evidence. I've been a peace activist from the time I was 17 and faced the draft. My book, Central America for the Beginner, exposed the Reagan administration's complicity in the violence of that region in the 1980s. This book sold out its first printing in 2 months. For years, I also chaired the Colorado Peace Mission. Richard Gage was born a Reagan Republican, so neither of us fits the stereotype of the government apologist or the wild-eyed conspiracy theorist. Richard Gage's Blueprint for Truth and this rebuttal focus on the science behind the collapses of the 3 buildings at the World Trade Center. That's what Richard does best. As he said in his video, tonight we are presenting the technical truths, the evidence found for explosives. And Richard stays focused on that, rarely venturing into any other subjects. Richard's presentation is so compelling that several times I've wondered if maybe he's right. I too have investigated these technical assertions and have twice debated Richard on the evidence, once on radio and once in person. In Blueprint for Truth, the audience is presented with a torrent of information. It's going to take some time to look at all these claims, and so for the next couple hours, you'll see the fruits of hundreds of hours of my research on the validity of these claims. After you watch Richard's video, watch this one too, I will share with you why I strongly believe the scientific evidence supports natural collapse, and then you can really see both sides. So I have an outrageous request, that you suspend your beliefs, just for now, and listen. Listen even more carefully to the person you most disagree with, and that's not easy. There's a famous attitude polarization study from 1979 that shows that when people are presented with views that both oppose and support their own, it almost always strengthens their existing beliefs. So resist that. Allow yourself to really ask, is this true? Is this the whole story, or is it just the part that Richard wants us to see or that Chris wants us to see? Let me demonstrate how challenging that is. Here are 6 cards. Please choose one of these cards and fix it in your mind. Now I will remove the card you chose. If this is a new trick, chances are you didn't notice that all the cards in the second set are different. We have a mental power to assume other cards are the same, and that blinds us to the truth of what is right before our eyes. We all have certain core uninvestigated assumptions. We see what we assume we will see. Richard urges us to look at the Twin Towers with a new pair of glasses. I hope you will use that new pair of glasses to look at both sides with equal openness. In Richard's presentation as well as mine, you will see edited videos and slides to make you see what Richard or I want you to see. Be careful, or you will see only what you already believe is there. Seeing is believing, but believing is also seeing. MIT professor Thomas Iger was once complaining about the 9/11 truth movement, and he remarked, quote, "These people use the reverse scientific method. They determine what happened, throw out all the data that doesn't fit their conclusion, and then hail their findings as the only possible conclusion." Well, it's a human tendency that we all share. Richard Gage also talks about scientific method, repeatable experiments, changing hypotheses, and he attacks NIST for admitting that they never looked for explosives. Quote, "How can you find what you're not looking for?" Close quote. I brought that question to Michael Newman at NIST, and he replied, quote, "We follow the evidence." Well, I asked, if you had found detonator materials or other physical evidence of controlled demolition, would you have looked for evidence of controlled demolition then after that? Of course, he said. He also did not look for mini-nukes, post-Star Wars energy rays, aliens, missiles, holograms, or other alleged sources of the World Trade Center collapses. To Richard Gage, this is reverse scientific method. To NIST, it was following evidence and not finding any evidence of controlled demolition in the debris. There is an easy solution to this standoff, but it's not being done by the 9/11 truth activists. I will discuss this when we talk about the thermitic materials allegedly in the dust. I tried really hard to look at both sides, and I've sometimes wondered if Richard Gage is right, as I've said. I've read dozens of expert explanations, watched several 9/11 videos, dug up original complete eyewitness interviews, joined an online science Q&A club, read 1,000 pages of the NIST report, and asked some really tough questions directly of NIST, chemist Kevin Ryan, and former controlled demolition employee Tom Sullivan. I've asked over a dozen technically trained people to try to answer these questions. There's a certified structural engineer from New York, for example, who believes in 9/11 government complicity, but not controlled demolition. I've talked with experts who have studied 9/11, including scientists of all kinds, metallurgists, a 9/11 fire engine chief, other structural engineers, chemists, controlled demolition experts, a dust analyst, architects, a range of other people with expertise in direct 9/11 experience. I've joined several physics and 9/11 chat rooms. Outside of the 9/11 truth movement, I have met one scientifically trained person who agrees with one of the scientific assertions that are used to support the theory of controlled demolition of the World Trade Centers. I always say I can be wrong. I'm not a scientist, after all. I can still be convinced, and if you doubt me, I just ask that you suspend your doubt for the next several minutes. Listen carefully, open the aperture, and see if anything I say makes sense. If you doubt Richard, promise me you'll watch his Blueprint for Truth video too, so you can make a fair judgment. Thank you for watching.